Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about the upcoming Venus retrograde in Leo. And in celebration of that, I've got my own little lion here who wants to say hello. Say hi to everyone, Perkin. There we go. um, so this is a pretty special Venus retrograde, which I'll talk about more in a minute or two. But essentially, Venus will go retrograde on the 23rd of July until the 9th of September. And it will station retrograde at 28 Leo 36, and then station direct again in September at 12 Leo. So you might want to check your chart for any placements in Leo between 12 degrees and 28, but also where the Sun and Venus rule your chart, the houses they rule, and of course where they're actually placed. And just to note, we're already in the shadow of the retrograde. So we entered that on the 19th of June and we'll come out of the shadow around the 7th of October when Venus gets back up to full speed. And as we know, Venus runs in an 8-year cycle. So the last time Venus was retrograde in Leo was 8 years ago. So it can be helpful to sort of look back and sort of see what was happening in your life around those times. But what's special about this retrograde? The last time Venus actually retrograded and then went direct entirely in Leo was 1812, a long time ago, and I will talk about that more in a minute. Venus and Leo, come on, let's celebrate ourselves. Let's showcase ourselves. You know, Venus is about the feminine principle too. So this could be about women being in the headlines, but it's about our relationship with our creative projects and our creative endeavors. So it can be anything from our children, if we have any, to the arts, to anything connected to drama in our life, anything connected to beauty, anything that's important to you. Let's be proud. Okay, let's be dramatic about it and let's not be afraid to take center stage. But of course, Venus is all connected up with our self-worth too, particularly when it's in Leo, because Leo is about the self, the ego, the identity. So this is very much about thinking around how we value ourselves, you know, not just from a personal level, but how we value our personal place in society too, because of course Aquarius is the opposite sign to Leo, which is about society and community. Retrograde periods are, I love them. They're just the perfect time to go back and to reflect and to sort of think how far we've come, and just to take a pause, okay? So we could just be sort of thinking at this time about past romances, perhaps, when you perhaps didn't stand up to be seen, so perhaps didn't value yourself enough to put yourself out there and get on the stage, which is a very Leo thing, where you perhaps didn't lead the way, you chose not to, and perhaps times when you should have said, I will, but you chose not to. You know, have a think about why, you know, the reasons behind that. You know, it's all about letting that inner lioness or lion out. You know, let them lead and, you know, just let them out and show themselves. And it's interesting, over the past few days, I've had several clients and friends talking about they're making a stand, because of course Leo is a fixed sign. They're making a stand and doing the right thing for themselves. And there's been several of these examples around their self-worth in their jobs, in their career. So not accepting the treatment they're getting by either clients or employers, you know, questioning what they're getting paid. You know, is their pay worthy of the job they're doing? And I've even had you know, a couple of clients resign, or choose to part company with clients. So it's all connected to self-worth. You know, is your pay reflecting the job you're doing and how much you are worth? So returning to what's especially interesting about this retrograde, you know, as I said, it's the first time Venus has been solely retrograde in Leo. You know, often it will retrograde in Virgo and then dip into Leo, or it will retrograde in Leo and dip back into Cancer. This is just Leo season, it really is. But before I discuss that even more, there's something really interesting about the chart for this Venus station, okay? It forms two very powerful yods, and hopefully you can see the chart, which I've tried to put into this video. The first yod, we can see a Venus apex, forming two inconjuncts to Neptune and Pluto. And in the second chart, we can see a yod with a Neptune apex to Venus and the Libra South node. And of course, Venus rules that Libra South node. And I'll be making a separate talk next week about the nodes changing signs into Libra and Aries. But if we quickly look at that Venus, Neptune, Pluto yod, that Neptune Pluto sextile, it's a measure of growth of humanity, and it's about cultural awareness. And with Venus in Leo at the apex of that, it's about our cultural awareness of female worth and the female principle. So I think during the next few months with Venus retrograde and in shadow until October, expect to see a lot of female presence in the news, whether that's female leaders, actresses, you know, that type of thing. Very much connected with societal change, highlighting what we value in society. Or because Neptune's involved in both of these yods, it's also about what we treat as worthless or useless or something that isn't of value, okay? We can also see in this chart, and I've taken out all the planets that weren't particularly relevant because I really wanted just to focus in on these yods and that cardinal grand cross of the Sun, Pluto and the nodes, which we have the day before Venus goes retrograde. That's going to be an interesting time, and I will post more on that at another point, and you know, that's a separate subject. We're possibly going to see more financial and political crises, but particularly around the popularity of leaders, I think, which is a very Venus in Leo subject. But one current example of where people are devalued or undervalued or treated as worthless, and in this case women, is in Afghanistan. And it's just coming into the news now that the Taliban have ordered hair and beauty salons to shut, which is further shrinking and demeaning the value of women's freedom in Afghanistan. And any of you that have worked with me know I've done an awful lot of astrological work on Afghanistan, which I'll be dropping onto my website in the next couple of weeks. So you can see here we've got the chart for Afghanistan. This is the main chart I use, the 1973 chart when the Republic of Afghanistan was formed. And we can see here that Afghanistan's having a Venus return. Venus returns are always fascinating, so you might want to go back and look at your own Venus returns throughout the years. Afghanistan there has Venus at 19 degrees of Leo, so Venus has already gone over it and is going to go back over it. So expect to see a lot more in the news about Afghanistan and the treatment of women over there. And of course, not just women, you know, it'll be any minority groups or you know, people that are underprivileged or the underdogs in society, that type of thing. Moving a bit closer to home here in the UK, I've got the chart here for the UK, which is in the middle wheel, and Rishi Sunak, he's on the outside. We can see that Venus is going to retrograde over Rishi's Leo North Node at 24 Leo, which is conjunct the UK Saturn at about 23 Leo there in the 11th house. And the 11th house, of course, represents sorry, I'm not even say that. It represents Parliament, legislative government. It's a tongue twister. As we know, Rishi Sunak's not really doing particularly well in the popularity ratings. And of course, Venus in Leo is all about the popularity of leaders. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there with him. And also, there's often criticism of Rishi because of his super wealth, and therefore how he can actually relate to the people of the country. So keep an eye on that. Also questions around his authority, questions around his leadership, and of his value to the UK. You know, how is his leadership impacting the value of the UK? You know, he's perhaps caught up in the grandeur of his own sort of plans. But with his North Node there, conjunct Saturn, you know, I do wonder if there perhaps are going to be further restrictions and rules, especially when the UK is in a huge cost of living crises. And of course, Venus is connected up with money, as we know. So I mentioned that 8-year cycle of Venus. But this is much bigger than that regular 8-year cycle, because of course I mentioned earlier that this is the first time we've had Venus retrograde in Leo entirely since 1812, and before that 1804. So I just thought I'd have a very quick dip back into history to see what sort of things were going on there. If you go back to 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte was elected Emperor of France and began his first reign. He was actually crowned in December 1804, but he began his reign in the spring and through into the summer. And of course, that's when the first French Empire was established. And Napoleon is just a classic Leo figure, isn't he? He did have Sun in Leo. So I just thought that was a very relevant example. Also in 1804 in the US, we had the completion of the ratification of the 12th Amendment, which of course is all around the procedure of electing the president and vice president, the people that lead the US, Leo. It's all about leaders. And I've got another chart here, which I hope you can see. And we can see that Venus is going to be opposing the Sibley, that's the US chart, the Sibley moon at 27 Aquarius. And that actually stations on Joe Biden's Chiron, which is at 28 Leo. And he also has his Leo North Node very close by at 29 degrees. So let's just keep an eye on both Biden's popularity and Biden's health, perhaps. Okay. Then we move forward to 1812, and then we have the height of the Napoleonic Wars. You know, Napoleon's Leo sun really coming out and roaring loudly. And we also had the War of 1812, which was the height of conflict between the US, Great Britain, and the Native Americans. So just to finish, use this upcoming retrograde period to review all your relationships, of course. It's Venus, but not just relationships with other people, personal, business, friendships, whatever. But also your relationship with money and anything of importance or value to you. But mostly, because this is in Leo, it's about your relationship with yourself, how you identify yourself, how you value yourself, and how you value your place in society. And one particularly interesting date to keep an eye on would be the 13th of August, and that's when the Sun and Venus conjoin at 20 degrees of Leo. So put that date in your diary. So that's pretty much it. Take care and enjoy Leo's season, because the Sun, of course, will be joining Venus in Leo. Go out and have fun and just let that lion or lioness out to enjoy themselves. Take care. Bye.